Hello guys, and welcome to another edition of Rage Against the Dice. Once again it's Wednesday and time for another RPG review. This time we're going to take a look at the Alien role-playing game by Free League or Fria Ligan, a Swedish game and book publisher known for Tales from the Loop and Mutant Year Zero, among other games. For those who don't know, Alien is a sci-fi horror film franchise first released in 1979 and spanning nearly 40 years over 6 movies, not including the Alien vs Predator films. The first film sees the crew of the Nostromo encounter a xenomorph on a strange alien planet. In a break from the norm, the sequel, Aliens, is just as good, if not slightly better, than the first film. The rest in the franchise, well, I mean, they exist. Worth giving them a watch, maybe, if you want. Now, this isn't the first Alien RPG, though you would be forgiven for forgetting about the car crash that was Alien's adventure game, published by Leading Edge Games in 1991. It was based on the sequel film and focused on colonial marines combating the xenomorphs from the film, including facehuggers, chest bursters, and the Queen herself. The system was horrendously complex, utilising a 3d6 skill resolution, but D100 for combat, with detailed hit locations and specific injuries that you had to track throughout the game. It was slated in a number of publications and was described as being more akin to a board game than an RPG, hardly surprising considering the company had previously released a moderately successful board game based on Aliens a few years earlier. Thankfully, this version is much better, although that's not difficult to do. The book comes in at a hefty 400 pages, front and back covers included. It's 2 double-page star maps, one at the front, one at the back, and it's spread across a whopping 13 chapters. The book's very stylized, similar to other Free League games in many respects. In-world flavour text, when we get into it, is in green against the background, and you also have the sections on solid backgrounds being the game explanation-y bits, if that makes sense. Chapter 1 gives us a brief overview of the game, the timeline involved, and the different modes of play. So here's the timeline. The game assumes that you are currently in 2180, present day, with all of the events of the films having happened previously. It gives you a brief overview of the different 3 campaign frameworks: space truckers, colonial marines, or frontier colonists. You could also be company reps. There's a bit about how to role-play the game, how it works, the 2 different types of game mode. Now, this is interesting in that you have cinematic play and campaign play. Now, cinematic play is designed specifically as one-shots. Most, if not all, of your player characters will die. They are provided with pre-generated characters to use in it as well. There are 3 key themes here. Campaign play. How do I forget campaign play? That's the more kind of create your own characters, see them develop, try not to get them eaten by aliens, that you would expect of a standard role-playing game. There's 3 key themes to an alien, well, to aliens in general: space horror, sci-fi action, and a sense of wonder. We get a very brief description of each there, like very brief. The standard, what you need to play. Now, the dice system uses D6s of 2 different colours: base dice and stress dice. The 6 side on both sets of dice. If you buy the dice from Freeligan, are kind of, they've got a symbol on them, which you can see on the screen there. It's kind of like a blip on a radar, which is a success. And on the stress dice, the symbol on one is a facehugger, which can't be good, can it, really? I mean, let's be honest, facehuggers want to impregnate you with their alien seed. And the standard, what is a role-playing game? If you don't know what a role-playing game is this far into the book, well then, what are you doing looking at this? Some nice artwork. It's, you know, a bit gritty, a bit dark, but that's the Alien films. Do you know what I mean? Chapter 2 is character creation. If all you intend to play is cinematic, ignore it mostly, to be fair. Cinematic campaigns come with pre-made characters, but if you're going to be playing the campaign, then you need this. Character creation follows a 10-step system, starting with choosing a career, buying attributes and skills, deciding on your personal agenda, which player is going to be your buddy and which one's going to be your rival, and then rolling for cash. There's only 4 attributes in the game: strength, agility, wit, and empathy. You get 14 points to spend across them at a minimum of 2 points and a maximum of 4 per attribute, apart from your career's key attribute, which can go as high as 5. Androids are special. They gain a +3 in 2 of their attributes, allowing them to take them up to a maximum of 8. But there's downsides to being an android. Skills are rated 0 to 5. 12 skills, you only get 10 points to distribute between them, but actually most careers only give you 3 or 4 skills that you can put points into, and you get a single point. Well, one of your points can be allocated to any of your skills, like any skill that you want that's not within your career. I'm unsure how I feel about the agenda system, giving a personal agenda to your character. Because basically you sit around in campaign mode at the end and discuss whether people work towards their agenda. Did they achieve part of their agenda? Did they act appropriately? And they get a free bonus XP if they do. Never a fan of that. I think it's, well, I just don't like it, basically. You might. Please comment, let me know if you do. I don't. And I'm very unsure. In fact, I totally dislike the buddy and rival mechanic. Not for the buddy part of it. It's that rival part. There's enough infighting in most groups as it is, and this just compounds the fact, in my opinion. You know, there's a whole section here on player versus player. That's not good, I don't think. Page 38, if I can skip ahead, is starts with the careers. There's 9 careers in the game. These are Colonial Marine, Colonial Marshal, Company Agent, Kid, Medic, Officer, Pilot, Roughneck, your workers, and Scientists. Each one is presented in the same sort of format. Brief description of the career first, next to their portrait. We get the key attribute, skills, and career talents that they can take. A section on sample personal agendas, but you can always create your own. Signature item that you may have, but you can always make your own. Appearance descriptors, but you can always make your own. And the typical gear that you start with and how much cash you get to begin. There's also, and this is odd for me, typical names of people in this career. What? What? There isn't a typical scientist name. There's not a typical marine name. There's not a typical anything name, to be fair. Why do we need this? Why not just give us a section on names, naming conventions? Do you know what I mean? What is the absolute point? It looks pretty though. I'm going to take a break because I need a drink. It's been a very, very long day at work. I've been talking lots and now I'm talking more to record this for you. So I'm going to take a break, have a drink, wash my hands, remain indoors. Back soon. Hello guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your little break. I certainly did. I had some nice refreshing lemonade. Thank you. Chapter 3, in an odd move, the skills section, starts with an explanation of dice pools and how they work. Okay. Basically, grab a number of dice equal to the skill and the attribute relevant for it, add in any stress dice that you might have, and roll them. Single 6 is a success. To get any extra 6s, you can perform stunts with the skill that are listed in the skill description. If any of the stress dice roll a 1 or the face hugger, then bad stuff happens. There's 12 skills in the game, but we don't get to see descriptions of those for 6.5 pages. For me, I think there's a better place to put that bit of information about how the dice works, but actually, judging by how big the combat chapter is, I understand wanting to put it somewhere else so that it's not too big of a chapter, although it's already a massive chapter. But, you know, whatever, this is their decision, this is where they decide to put it, it's not up to me. As I said, 6.5 pages in the skills chapter before we actually get to the skills. There's 12 in total. Heavy machinery, stamina, close combat, mobility, piloting, ranged combat, observation, comtech, survival, manipulation, medical aid, and command. They all have a description of the skill. Most have a paragraph on the meaning of a failure, the meaning of a success, and any stunts that you can perform. So let's look at survival, for example. It's based on wits, a little bit of description there. If you fail, you don't find a safe haven unless someone comes to your rescue. You're on borrowed time before you're going to die. On a success, you find safe haven to weather a storm. And stunts that you could perform. So for every additional 6 or symbol, if you're using a special dice roll, choose one stunt applicable to the situation. So you could give one success to another PC in the same trouble as you, gain +1 modification to a later skill roll relating to this one, or you could impress someone with how well you've found somewhere to bolt up and survive. It's not the biggest chapter in the world, chapter 3, you know, but like I said, 6.5 pages before we get to those 12 skills. I personally, if I was designing this layout, would have moved those 12 skills into the character creation section and also put chapter 4 into that section as well, because it all relates to each other, to be fair, because chapter 4 is our talents, as you can see on the screen. And really, there's not a lot to say about this chapter, other than, you know, there's career-specific talents. We get 3 per career, as you can see on the screen now. I'm skipping through them quite quick. We then get to the general talents. There's 31 general talents. Now, some of these talents seem way, way better than others, but that is just me giving a first glance over them without having actually played the game, so I may be wrong here. You know, it may be different. What I will say, the background artwork is always nice throughout the book, very in keeping with the theme of aliens, those sort of things. I mean, you would expect it as an aliens game, But you know, they are nice bits of artwork. I think it's very artwork heavy because there's something going on most of the pages, as you can see. So next up is chapter 6. No, sorry, chapter 5. Couldn't read that there, my own writing. And it covers combat and panic. Having seen the Alien films, one does usually lead to the other. So this is the wise grouping, I think. The movement within combat uses maps and zones. These are abstract movement zones or area zones. Each one could be a small room, a long corridor, a vast chamber, or literally anything in between. If you've seen my Star Trek review, you know I'm not overly fond of this type of movement. Your mind might vary, and I may just be being grouchy because of my tabletop war games background, but I like to know how far you can move in a turn, or in a round, sorry, to use the proper term for this game. I like to know precisely those sort of details rather than the abstract of, you can move a zone in a turn, so actually you can move, that means you can move anywhere from 2 meters across the corridor to 26 meters in a round, which is between 5 and 10 seconds. Zones get features such as cramped, dark. These have effects on the combat rules that you would do. So for example, dark, it's dimly lit. Observation rules get a -2 modification. Ranged attacks into the zone also suffer -2 modification, and you can't pass through the zone. And they can't pass through the zone, sorry. Stealth mode is essentially the exploration phase and is split into turns, each turn lasting between 5 and 10 minutes of in-game time. Now honestly, the whole thing feels like a hidden movement board game, such as Letters from Whitechapel or Scotland Yard, due to the fact that the enemies move in secret, known only to the GM or game's mother. Once the enemy is revealed, we go into combat mode, split into 5 to 10 second rounds. Initiative is determined using cards numbered 1 to 10, 1 going first, 10 going last. Each player, NPC, and enemy gets a card to determine their initiative. Which is a bit odd, that you need dice, you need cards, go for it, whatever. You can change initiative by swapping with another player who has to be able to hear you if you speak to them, so that you can swap cards around. So you know, if your doctor gets a 1, there's really no point in him going first. He probably want to go last. Whereas your, you know, ultra heavy combat machine of a marine getting a 10, meaning he's going last after the alien has tried to kill everyone. He's probably going to want to go first, so let them swap. That's a good idea. I do kind of like that. You also get to make slow and fast actions. A slow action is basically something that involves rolling dice more than likely. A fast action is obviously quicker, doesn't require rolling, although it might. You can make 1 slow action and 1 fast action, or 2 fast actions on your turn. It encourages you to describe what you're doing, different types of movement, running, crawling, vehicle movement, ambushes and sneak attack. You know, it's quite a chunky section. Close combat and ranged combat each get their own subsections, which would have been easy to access had the book been hyperlinked, which you know my feelings on this by now if you've watched literally any of my other reviews. I'm going to have to put this pen down because I've just nearly hit the microphone with it because I'm so annoyed by it not being hyperlinked. yeah, as you can see, a few pages on each. Damage is a hefty chunk of the section, with a massive critical injuries table, ranging from simply winded or having a bit of a sprained ankle, through busted kneecaps, crushed feet, and then all the way up to disemboweled, crushed skull, or impaled heart. There's permanent mental trauma that you can have. I mean, if you just witnessed a friend being disemboweled, having their skull crushed and impaled through the heart, you're probably going to have some sort of trauma. But actually, with that injuries table, one bad roll and it's good night, VMA. It's all over. The chapter's rounded out with more detail on stress and panic, other hazards, such as being exhausted, being in a vacuum, explosions, diseases, drowning, radiation, and xenomorphs. I mean, I'd say they're going to be pretty hazardous for your health. I have no idea what that was. And then finally, there's a section on vehicle combat. Aerial vehicles, ground vehicles, and the like. I'm going to take a quick break because I need another drink and to find out what that bang was. Hopefully nothing's exploded, but it seemed odd that it happened after I said the word explosions. I'll be back soon. Go for a wee, wash your hands, not just because you've had a wee, but always because you've had a wee. And take a little break. Come back, join me soon. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your little break. Chapter 6 is our gear chapter. It's all about weapons, armor, and everything else that you would need. We start off with pistols. What I do like is that we get to see pictures of most of the ranged weapons in this game. Starting off with a simple service pistol, magnum revolver, EVA pistols, bolt guns, rifles, some special rules for rifles and descriptions of them, and then the breakdowns, bonus that they do, the damage they do, the range at which they can be used, the weight, the cost, and any comments about them, such as armor piercing, full auto grenade launcher for the Armat M41A pulse rifle. There. It's refreshing to see so many pictures of weapons. Quite often role-playing games don't. They just assume you know what things look like. If you're not familiar with them, then how are you going to know? So stick some pictures in, guys. Doesn't take much. Then we move on to heavy weapons, such as Smart Gun, the Incinerator Unit. Nice. It's essentially a flamethrower. Close combat weapons, unarmed, stun baton, knife, blunt instruments, and a cutting torch. If you go hand to hand with the xenomorph, probably is not going to end well for you, not the xenomorph. Suits and armor, including the P5000 power loader. You're going to wear a power loader. Oh, how nice is that? We then move on to other equipment such as the computer mainframes. Don't know why we need to know how much these cost, but we do. We get to see the Apollo and the Mother computers, data storage, diagnostics and display, vision devices. There's a whole range of equipment in here, like obsessively so, in fact, to some degree. Food and drink, vehicles you can purchase. The annoying thing for me is the pictures of anything large, like the vehicles, like the spaceships, are split across 2 pages. Somehow managed to zoom in, not quite sure how. Vehicle weapons as well. Oh, look at the sleep pod. Chapter 7, A Hard Life Among the Stars. This is all about the background setting information needed for space stations, colonies, and starships. It's very similar in theme, I think, to the Star Trek's. Oh, sorry, when I say in theme, in layout and design almost, but to the Star Trek one. Hardly surprising, Freiligan uses Modiphius to distribute their games, so there may be some influence there, who knows. Information about travel through space, neurological distortions, chartered space, how to live in space, spaceships, space stations, some space station descriptions, deep space colonies, etc., etc. Living expenses, works and pay, communicating on the frontier. It's a lot of background information. It's really useful. And then we go on to spacecraft basics, which gets to anything but when we come to internal modules for spaceships, armaments. This book loves its tables. Loves its tables. So basically rules for kitting out a spaceship. And then we've got sample spaceships of 2183 AD, which is odd since the game is set in 2180 present day. So travelling forward 3 years to get some ships here. There's the Star Cub, the Corvus, the Bison, Star Clipper, and the Frigate. Different classes, different costs, designs on how they're built, so that you can use them. Oddly, there's space combat. Now, when I think of Alien, I don't really think of spaceship combat, but you know, it's a sci-fi RPG set in space, so really, I mean, a sci-fi RPG without space combat seems a bit pointless, but whatever. Some nice pictures of ships in here, but again, they're split over 2 pages. Now on the PDF, you only get to see one half at a time, so you've got to flip backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, which is irritating. If you did have the rather hefty hardback book, you're not going to be able to see all of the picture anyway, unless you want to break the spine of the book, which you're probably not going to want to do after spending the money on it. Perhaps a better choice would have been smaller pictures with a change in orientation, so you could fit it on one page but have it oriented differently. I think for me that would have made it much easier to read, well, to see them and to make the references. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of space combat rules. I don't know whether that came across. But just more tables, like, give up already. Chapter 8 details your job as the game mother. Get it? GM, game mother, because the computers are called mother. Now, if ever there was an RPG that screamed GM versus players, this is it. We revisit the 3 themes from earlier. No, my notes have skipped a bit there. So there's some game principles here about 8 basic principles underpinning the game. So riff from the movies, limit the resources, stay in the shadows, increase the pressure, let them breathe, give them a break, fuel their agendas, bring horrible death, and reveal the universe. They're useful tips, handy to read if you're a GM. We revisit the themes. Here we go. Mix those bits up on my notes. Sorry about that. Space horror. And then within that, there's 2 kind of tropes that we need to emphasize. So space is hell and kill and greed. Sci-fi action, someone else's war and expendable assets. And a sense of wonder, the origin of life, and the old and new gods. There's a bit on retrofuturism. Basically everything's old and worn. Spaceships look like oil refineries. Computers are the size of a room. Spacesuits look like they belong in 19th century divers. It's designed for practicality and durability. So it's got that kind of old new aesthetic. Unlike Star Trek, where everything's ultra sleek and modern and shiny, this is gritty, it's dark, it's a little bit more realistic. Bits here about stress and horror. It's a horror game at its heart. Question's not if, but when the PC is going to encounter something horrific. So how to build that stress and horror. The 3 stages of fear. Now, if you've ever tried to do a horror game, it's tough. It really is. You've got to have the right players, you've got to have the right mindset, and building that tension is so tough. Here we've got the 3 stages of fear and advice on how to do it without overdoing it. It's really good. I did find this pit incredibly useful, and I can apply it to other games. But again, if you're a fan of my RPG reviews, hopefully you are, then you know that reading the GM sections, nick stuff, use them in other campaigns, in other games. You'll get bits of advice by reading these sections in all of the different games that you can then apply to whichever game you're playing. Even if you don't think you can. Star Trek The Next Generation, for example, had that fantastic episode Night Terrors, which always still creeps me out in the morgue scene. And that built some fantastic suspense and tension with some very creepy, almost horror moments. You can recreate those sort of scenes yourself using this advice, but you wouldn't get that advice from the Star Trek role-playing game. Managing the stress levels, splitting the teams. We get some information here on NPCs, on how to create them. Cinematic play gets revisited with a little bit of information about the structure of cinematic scenarios. They're all, like I said, when you get them, you've got the characters already created for the players to use with the cinematic scenarios, so you don't even have to do any donkey work. Have a read through it, chuck them a character sheet, murder them all. They're characters, obviously, not the players. Please don't murder your players. You may want to at times, it's not worth it. Prison's tough, don't do it. Then we've got campaign play. All about session 0, the goals and rewards, the focus of your campaign, where they're going to be based, what they're going to be doing, and then bits about xenomorphs in the campaign play. Basically, you're not trying to kill your players in campaign mode, or at least not straight away. So xenomorphs should be very rare. You know, very, very used sparingly and kind of as a single big bad. We also get a reading list here. Unsurprisingly, they're all about the Alien universe, because reading a Star Trek book, like novel, not going to help you set an Alien role-playing game, is it? Unlike other games where, like other sci-fi games where you might actually want to read, like, spaghetti western type books, or you know, those sort of things to get the feel for how that game works. It's Alien. It's unapologetically Alien. You're going to need to read about Alien. Plain and simple. Chapter 9 is all about governments and corporations. It's background information for your GM. You can take bits out, give it to your players so that they know things about relevant corporations. Big businesses, big governments, big lies. The three-world empire. You get a description, their history, their military and organization, locations, leaders, relations with other factions, and their current activities, what they're up to. The United Americas. the Union of Progressive Peoples in Soviet Union, the Independent Core System Colonies, ICSC, Interstellar Commerce Commission, Weyland-Yutani, the Sal Bionational, Seegson. So yeah, like some really useful information in there, not massively in depth, but enough to kind of get you going, get your minds whirring, make up your own stuff from it, give it a whirl. Chapter 10 is Systems and Planets. This is a galactic gazetteer of sorts. Got some brief information about various planets, systems, colonies and sectors. Not really a lot to say about this, because anything I would have said about the last chapter I'm going to say about this as well. Tells you key locations, little bits of information. Not massive amounts, not massively in depth, but there's quite a lot of them. So yeah, as you can see, pages upon pages of locations with brief information. Hope you like my little music. Again, artwork is beautiful. Like, if you've ever seen Tales from the Loop, it's kind of, the artwork is just stunning, and this is very in keeping with that, and I love it. You know, really do like it. Nice. I'm going to take another break because I think I've nearly just wet myself looking at that picture because I forgot that it was there. And a xenomorph dripping acid is a bit creepy. I'm going to take a break, like I said. Hopefully you will too. If not, just keep watching, because no time will pass between, realistically, me stopping this, going away, coming back and restarting it when you're watching it back. Okay, see you shortly. Hello guys and welcome back. Hope you've washed your hands. I certainly did. Chapter 11 is about the alien species. Gives us the history of the different alien species that are there, and their rules, signature attacks, various stages of their life cycle, etc., etc. Starts off though with the engineers. Basically the people who built the pyramids, their physical traits, architecture, the technology that they have that you might encounter. The basically nice bits of information, flavor text. We then get on to the xenomorphs. There's general xenomorph rules, like I said. So in combat, they follow special rules. Primarily, they have a speed rating and they have signature attacks. So skills, xenomorphs don't have attributes like humans. They can use specific skills and then roll a number of base dice equal to their skill level only. Xenomorphs can have skill levels much higher than humans. They never push rolls. That's something, sorry, I didn't cover earlier. Pushing a roll is you can kind of add stress to yourself to give yourself a better chance of succeeding by adding additional dice. They have an armor rating because of their thick hide. Their health, so how much wounds. If they're reduced to 0, they're not broken in the way a human is. Instead, roll a d6 on the critical injury table for the xenomorphs. And some of them have special abilities, which are explained. The critical injuries could be rise again, wounded, desperate action, last breath, or it's torn apart. So we get the neomorphs, first of all. Basically, they were found on Planet 4 of an uncharted system in Sector 87. Yeah, they're creepy little things. Starting off with egg sacs, neomorphic motes, bloodbursters, neophytes, which are juvenile neomorphs, adult neomorphs, We then move on to Xenomorph XX121. Basically, your classic Xenomorph. Their special abilities: Acid Splash, Sprint, Resistant to Vacuum, Falling is pretty much good for them. They're immune to cold. It's resistant to radiation. They don't essentially breathe in any way that we've observed, and they don't have a heat signature, because apex predators apparently. So we start off with Overmorph, the egg. Face Huggers, because they want to stick it in you and impregnate your face. Chest Burster, Bambi Burster, Imp, whatever you want to call them. Got variable gestation. That's essentially like it's game over if you've got one of them coming out of you. Stalkers, Scouts, Drones. Their attack table there. Soldier, Worker, Sentries. Praetorians, Crushers, and Queens. Yeah, like a nice range of alien Gribblies to kill all of your enemies. Sorry, players with. Said that again. Gotta stop saying that. We also get extra solar species, the Swarm, which are insect, around 15 centimeters long. Swarm of insect omnivores, basically space locusts. Harvesters, which are 6 meter long, subterranean dinosaur-sized land animals. We also get lion worms, which don't sound nice, and all of the Nope, Tanakan scorpionids, which are around about 2 meter long scorpions. No. Just no. No. Like, I can't nope enough about this. No. Just no. 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 Basically. I don't know how many more times I can say that. Nope. Chapter 12 is our campaign play chapter. We get a more in-depth look at how to create a framework, based on whether it's space truckers or your colonial marines, your frontier colonists. There's rules for creating star systems using all of the many millions of tables that will be in here, and there truly are a vast number of tables. So we're starting off page 330 on creating a star system. All right, remember that, page 330. By page 339, we get this awesome scenario hooks table. I really do like this. It's a great idea. I think more RPGs should have them. Like 36 different hooks, single sentence hooks. If you can't do that for your game, then what are you doing? Like, it's easy enough. Stick them in your game, please. Because there will be GMs out there, new GMs especially, who basically are struggling to come up with ideas. So scenario hooks are always good. Even your experienced GM, it's good to get those kind of old school refreshing ideas, because some of them aren't new. Like the classic mistaken identity sort of thing, those sort of stuff. The great ideas that can spur your creative juices. And then we keep on going and going and going and going and going and going until page 354. So there's 24 pages of mostly tables. Okay. So page 354 is the start of the non-player characters. We get 15 sample non-player characters, starting from your covert androids, colonial marshals, corporate execs, cultists, doctors, rogue scientists, and pilots. 15 of them. It's not a massive amount, but it's enough that you can get the variety you need. Also remember, we had those rules earlier for creating NPCs, so if it's not covered in this table, knock them up quickly. It's easy enough to do. And we also get Novgorod Station. It's basically, this is your sample starter adventure for a campaign. It's a nice looking station. Other names that you might want to give it, there's a nice map there. I'm not going to look too in depth at this because your GM may want to use it. But lots of nice handy little maps that actually you can steal for other sci-fi RPGs if you need to. Chapter 13, our last chapter, is the sample cinematic story, in which it assumes most, if not all, of your characters are going to die. There's some nice maps of Hadley's Hope Colony, which I'll come to in a moment. But there's 5 pre-made characters to toss into the meat grinder that is Alien. We've got Macware, an officer, Hirsch, an ex-marine, Singleton, the pilot, Sig, the scientist, Holroyd, the roughneck. And here, like I said, some of the nice maps that are handy to use. Again, they're essential for this, but also handy to use in other games if you're struggling and you need a kind of colony map. Then steal it. Sorry, borrow it for inspiration. Steal it. I'm not going to focus on that too much because, as I said, your GM may want to run it. We've got the character sheet. Sorry about the orientation. It's because it's on tablet. It's quite a nice, if plain, character sheet. There's the slightly more complex version. We get a nice index, handy because it's not hyperlinked. It's not the most in-depth index, it's not huge, but it'll help you. And then we've got our final 2-page map, this time with faction breakdowns. So that's handy for all of you. And then finally, the back page. In the UK, they call themselves Free League. In Sweden, they're Fria Ligan. It's based on the Year Zero engine used in Mutant Year Zero, Tales from the Loop, Forbidden Lands, blah blah blah. So yeah, all in all, come on. Ooh, sorry about that. All in all, it's a beautiful book. There you go. Sorry about that. It's a beautiful book. It's very in theme for Alien. Dark, gritty, some really kind of evocative pictures from film. It uses the Year Zero engine. I've not really played using the Year Zero engine, so really I can't comment on how much I like it. I do have to say, reading through this particular version of it, I'm not inspired by it. It just feels a bit like it wants to be on a board rather than a tabletop RPG. I don't know how I feel about the two different play modes. I think campaign mode, I can't really see the kind of mileage in a campaign game of Alien. Personally speaking, you know, you might be totally different. Feel free to tell me otherwise. If you've played this, or if you've got ideas and you want to run a campaign for it, then, you know, awesome. But for me, I just think it's, if you're humans going up against an alien xenomorph, people are going to die. Ripley survived because they threw everything they could at it and then eventually flushed it into space. Do you know what I mean? They're brutal, they're savage, they're lethal, they are an apex predator, they will hunt and kill you. So, to me, I don't think it's got a lot of mileage personally for a campaign. For one shot, phenomenal, but I don't know how many one shots I would want to play in or to run with groups of players, like with the same group of players anyway. I just think, I don't know, to me it doesn't feel like it's got that replayability factor personally with a group. But yeah, like I said, it is stunning. It's, you know, it's very stylish, very well thought out and very well designed. But yeah, for me, it's not a game that I'm going to rush out to play. When I first heard about it, I was really excited and enthused. When I read through it for this review, I was like, yeah, got a bit disappointed, to be honest. So yeah, it's not one that I'd be rushing out to play. Like if someone wanted to run a one shot, I'd give it a go, but it's not something that I'm keen to run myself. Hope you've enjoyed this review. Hope it wasn't too negative. And I'd try to keep them as positive as I can, even if it's a game that doesn't enthuse me. I hope you did enjoy it. Please leave comments, likes, thumbs up, whatever. All that's left for me to say really is pray to the dice gods, may they smile upon you. Bye everyone.